The following content was created with the help of artificial intelligence, but carefully directed and reviewed by a human. Viewpoint, October 14th, morning. I found them at dawn. The light was that particular gray that comes before true sunrise, and I had climbed to the Eagle's Rest viewpoint, hoping to catch the mist rising from the valley. 3 months since I moved to this cabin, and I still wake before 5 most days. Old habits from the city, I suppose. The insomnia followed me here, but at least now I have somewhere to go when sleep won't come. The binoculars were lying on the wooden railing, not hanging from it, not placed carefully beside it, but lying across the top rail as if someone had set them down in a hurry and never returned. They were old. Brass fittings green with oxidation, leather straps cracked like dried riverbed. The kind of thing my grandfather might have carried in the war. I looked around for an owner, but the trail had been empty, and the parking lot below held only my truck. I should have left them, I know that now, but I was curious, and curiosity has always been my weakness. It made me a good architect once, before the firm collapsed, and Sarah left, and the drinking started. I wanted to know things. I wanted to see what others couldn't see. I raised the binoculars to my eyes. At first, nothing. The forest spread below me in shades of black and gray, the pines standing like soldiers in formation. Then I adjusted the focus wheel, and they appeared, between the trees, standing in the spaces where the light didn't reach. Dark shapes, human-shaped but wrong somehow, as if the shadows themselves had learned to stand upright. There were 7 of them that I could see. They were looking up at me. I lowered the binoculars. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or my tired eyes, or the beginning of some neurological episode. I raised them again. The figures were still there. Closer now, or perhaps I simply noticed how close they had been all along. 200 yards down the slope, standing among the pines, watching. I lowered the binoculars a second time. They were standing at the edge of the viewpoint clearing. 200 yards had become 20 feet. I could see them clearly now, though I wished I couldn't. They were tall, thin, dressed in something that might have been clothing or might have been their own substance. Their faces were smooth, featureless, but I knew they were smiling. I could feel it. I ran. I am not proud of this, but I ran. I left the binoculars on the railing and I ran down the trail to my truck, and I drove too fast on the winding road back to my cabin. I locked the doors. I locked the windows. I sat in the kitchen with my back to the corner and a kitchen knife in my hand until the sun finally rose and filled the rooms with ordinary light. They did not follow, or if they followed, they did not show themselves. I am writing this by daylight, and already I'm trying to convince myself that I imagined the whole thing. Sleep deprivation, stress. The isolation finally breaking me down, but I know what I saw. I know how the air grew cold when they appeared, how the birds stopped singing, how the world seemed to hold its breath. I know that when I looked through those binoculars, I saw something that was not meant to be seen, and that looking was an invitation. October 14th, evening, I went back. I know how that sounds. I know what Sarah would say, what my therapist in the city would say, but I had to know. I had to understand whether I was losing my mind or whether the world had lost its mind and simply failed to inform me. The binoculars were still there. Of course they were. No one else uses that trail. The Forest Service closed the upper parking lot 3 years ago when the bridge washed out, and I only know about the viewpoint because old Jed at the general store mentioned it when I bought my supplies last week. He said it was the best view in the county. He didn't mention what else might be viewing back. I approached slowly. The sun was setting and the shadows were long. I kept my eyes on the tree line, watching for movement. Nothing. Just the ordinary forest, the ordinary sounds of evening birds and distant water. The binoculars lay where I had left them. I picked them up. The brass was warm, though the day was cool. I turned them over in my hands, looking for a maker's mark, a serial number, anything that might explain their origin. There was nothing. Just the smooth metal and the worn leather and the 2 glass lenses that seemed to drink the light rather than reflect it. I did not look through them. I brought them home. I told myself I would study them, understand them, find some rational explanation for what I had experienced. I am a rational man. I designed office buildings for 15 years. I understand structure and load-bearing walls and the way concrete settles. I do not believe in ghosts, but I believe in what I saw. And I believe that the binoculars are the key. They sit on my kitchen table now. I have not touched them since I returned. I keep looking at them and they keep sitting there, patient as stones. Tomorrow I will ask Jed about them. Perhaps he knows who they belong to. Perhaps he can tell me I am not the first to see things through those lenses. Perhaps he can tell me how to make them stop. October 15th. Morning. Jed was no help. Or rather, he was help of the worst kind. I found him behind the counter of Hale's General Store, though he is no relation despite the shared name. He is 70 if he is a day, with hands like twisted roots and eyes the color of faded denim. He has lived here his entire life, he told me when I first arrived. His grandfather built the store. His father expanded it. Jed simply maintains it, waiting for the town to die completely so he can die with it. I asked about the binoculars casually, too casually perhaps. I mentioned finding some old equipment on the Viewpoint, asked if anyone had reported anything lost. Jed stopped sorting his nails. He has a habit of sorting things, nails into jars, buttons into tins, life into manageable compartments. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in those faded eyes. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. Eagle's Rest, he said. It was not a question. Yes. The Viewpoint. You went up there alone? Yes. At dawn? Yes. He went back to his nails. His hands were trembling slightly. Used to be a fire watchtower there, before my time, before my father's time. They built it in the 20s, when the logging companies were stripping these hills bare. Man named Carver watched from that tower, watched for smoke, watched for fires. Jed paused. Watched for other things too, they say. What other things? He didn't answer directly. Carver disappeared in 34, left his post one night, walked down into the trees. They found his boots at the edge of the clearing. Nothing else. Not bones, not clothing, not the binoculars he carried. Just the boots, standing side by side like he'd stepped right out of them. I felt cold despite the stove's warmth. And the binoculars I found. Jed finally looked at me again. Those weren't Carver's. His were ordinary field glasses, army surplus. These, he trailed off, shook his head. Folks around here know better than to touch things that don't belong to them. Things that show up where they shouldn't be. Hale. Marcus, I said automatically. Please call me Marcus. Mr. Hale, he repeated, and there was finality in it. I'd leave those glasses where you found them, if I were you, and I'd stay away from Eagle's Rest. Some views ain't meant for human eyes. I left with my groceries and no comfort. Jed knows something. They all know something, these people who have lived with these forests for generations. They have learned not to speak of it directly, not to name it, but they know. The way Jed's hands shook, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes when he spoke of Carver, the way he insisted on the formal address as if distance might protect him. I am not protected. I brought the binoculars home. I have touched them. I have looked through them, and they have looked back. Tonight I will stay inside. I will lock the doors and windows again. I will try to sleep, though I know I will not succeed. Tomorrow I will think about what to do, how to undo what I have done, if it can be undone. October 15th, night. They are outside. I woke to the sound of tapping. Not at the windows, not at the doors, but at the foundation. As if something were walking around the cabin, testing the walls, looking for entry points. I lay in bed for an hour, listening, telling myself it was animals, wind, the settling of old wood. Then I got up and looked out the kitchen window. The moon is full tonight. The clearing around my cabin is silver and black, sharp-edged as a woodcut, and in the trees at the edge of that clearing they stand. 7 of them. The same 7 I saw through the binoculars. They have not moved closer, but they have not moved away. They are waiting. I know this with a certainty I cannot explain. They are waiting for me to come out, or they are waiting for something else. For the right moment, for the conditions to be correct. I went to the basement. The cabin was built in the 50s by a man who feared nuclear war, and the basement is more bunker than storage space. Concrete walls 2 feet thick, a single heavy door with a bolt lock. No windows. I brought water, food, a flashlight, and these pages. I can still hear them. The tapping has stopped, but I feel their presence like a pressure against my temples. They are patient. They have been waiting since before Carver, since before the tower, since before this land had a name in any human language. I am trying to think clearly. This is what I do when projects go wrong, when buildings threaten to collapse, when the math doesn't work. I break the problem into components. I identify variables. I look for solutions. Variable 1, the binoculars create a connection between myself and these entities. When I look through them, I see the entities at a certain distance. When I stop looking, the entities appear at that same distance in physical reality. Variable 2, the entities cannot or will not enter the cabin. If they could, they would have done so by now. They are bound by some rule, some limitation I do not yet understand. Variable 3, the entities are persistent but not omnipotent. They can be seen, which means they can be observed, which means they can be studied. Hypothesis. If looking through the binoculars brings the entities closer, perhaps looking through them in reverse might push them away. The optics invert the image. Perhaps they invert the effect as well. I will test this hypothesis at dawn. If I am wrong, I will have brought them to my doorstep. If I am right, I may have found a way to survive. October 16th. Dawn. It worked. I waited until the first light showed through the cracks in the basement door. The presence had faded with the darkness, or perhaps I simply could not feel it as strongly. I unlocked the door and climbed the stairs slowly, listening. Nothing. The cabin was empty, silent, ordinary. I went to the kitchen window. The clearing was empty. The trees stood in their places, innocent as always. But I knew they were still there, somewhere in the forest, waiting for me to make the next move. I picked up the binoculars. My hands were steady, which surprised me. Fear has always made me precise, focused, in college, during exams. While others panicked, I grew calm. It is a useful trait, though it has made people think me cold. Sarah used to say I treated our marriage like a problem to be solved. She was not wrong. I walked to the back door and stepped outside. The morning air was cold, sharp with the smell of pine and distant snow. I raised the binoculars to my eyes, scanning the tree line. They were there, closer now, perhaps 100 yards into the forest. I could see them clearly, the smooth faces turned toward me, the wrongness of their proportions. They knew I was looking. They were waiting to see what I would do. I lowered the binoculars. They appeared at the edge of the clearing, exactly where I had seen them. 100 yards become 50 feet. I could smell them now, a scent like wet stone and old copper. I raised the binoculars again, but this time I reversed them. I looked through the objective lenses, the large ones, rather than the eyepieces. The world became small and distant, a miniature landscape I held in my hands. I found the entities in this inverted view. They seemed even farther away, shrunken, insignificant. I lowered the reversed binoculars. Silence. The clearing was empty. I scanned the trees with my naked eyes and saw nothing. I waited 10 minutes, then 20. The sun rose higher. Birds began to sing. The ordinary world reasserted itself. I walked to the edge of the clearing, to the place where they had stood. The grass was pressed down in 7 distinct patches, as if something heavy had stood there for hours. The smell lingered, that mineral scent, fading in the sunlight. They were gone. Not invisible, not hiding, but gone, pushed back to whatever distance the reversed optics had created. I spent the rest of the morning experimenting. I learned that the effect is proportional to the magnification. When I look through the binoculars normally, the entities appear at the distance I observe them. When I reverse the binoculars, they are pushed to that same distance. It is a lever, a tool, a weapon of strange geometry. By noon, I had pushed them to the far ridge, nearly a mile away. I could barely see them through the reversed lenses, small as insects. When I lowered the glasses, the forest was empty, peaceful, mine again. I am writing this in the afternoon light, and I am almost happy. I have solved the problem. I have found the solution that Jed and his ancestors never discovered or never dared to test. I will continue tomorrow, pushing them farther and farther away. I will drive them to the cliffs at the edge of the national forest, 10 miles from here. I will trap them there, unable to approach, unable to threaten, and then I will destroy the binoculars. Burn them, bury them, drop them into the deepest lake I can find. I will be free of this, free to live in this cabin as I intended, alone with my thoughts and my work, and the slow healing of time. I am already planning the garden I will plant in spring. Tomatoes, beans, the simple things that root you to the earth. October 17th, morning, the cliffs. I began at dawn, as is my habit now. The entities were waiting on the far ridge, exactly where I had left them. I could feel their attention even at this distance, a pressure against my thoughts like the hum of a power line. I worked methodically, looked through the reversed binoculars, find the entities in the miniature landscape, lower the glasses to confirm they had moved, again and again. Each push sent them farther, deeper into the wilderness, closer to the cliffs that mark the end of the habitable forest. By midday, they stood on the precipice itself. I could see them through the lenses, 7 dark figures against the gray stone, the empty air behind them. They had nowhere else to go. One more push, and they would be over the edge, falling or floating or simply ceasing to be. I did not know which. I paused. Something held me back. Not mercy, exactly. I do not think these things can be harmed by falling. But I was tired, and the sun was high, and I wanted to eat lunch in my cabin like a normal man. I decided to finish the task tomorrow, to give them one more night of hope, before I consign them to whatever waits below those cliffs. I lowered the reversed binoculars and turned toward home. That was when I heard the laughter. It came from the cliffs, from the entities I had just observed, high and cold, like wind through broken glass. They were laughing at me. Even at this distance, even defeated and cornered, they found me amusing. I ran. I am not ashamed to admit it. I ran all the way back to the cabin, and I locked the doors, and I sat in the basement with the binoculars in my lap until the sun set. They cannot reach me. I know this. I have proven this. But their laughter haunts me. It suggests knowledge I do not have, a joke I do not understand. Tomorrow I will finish it. I will push them over the cliffs and be done with this forever. October 18th. Morning. It is done. I woke before dawn, unable to sleep, driven by the need to complete what I had started. The fog was thick, a blanket of gray that reduced the world to shapes and suggestions. I could not see the cliffs from my cabin, could not see the trees 50 feet away. But I knew where they were. I had mapped this terrain in my mind, every ridge and valley, every path the entities had been forced to take. I raised the binoculars, the ordinary way, the way one uses binoculars. I wanted to see them one last time. I wanted to witness their defeat. The fog made it difficult. I scanned the cliffs for 10 minutes, finding nothing but gray on gray. Then the wind shifted, a brief parting of the mist, and I saw them. They stood at the very edge of the precipice, exactly where I had left them. But they were not cowering. They were not defeated. They were arranged in a semicircle, facing me, and every one of them was smiling. No, not smiling, grinning. The smooth features I had observed before had changed, shifted, become mouths without teeth, without lips, just openings that stretched across their faces in expressions of terrible joy, and they were looking directly at me, through the fog, through the distance, through the lenses of the binoculars. They saw me seeing them. I understood then. I understood everything. The binoculars work both ways. They always have. When I look through them, I see the entities at a certain distance, and they appear at that distance. But the reverse is also true. When I look through them, the entities see me. They know exactly where I am. They have always known. I have not been pushing them away. I have been pulling them closer, one reversed glance at a time, drawing them toward me like a fisherman playing a line. The cliffs are not their prison. They are my destination. They have been leading me, guiding me, letting me believe I was the hunter when I was always the prey. The laughter I heard was not defeat, it was anticipation. I write these final words with shaking hands. I know what will happen when I stop looking. I know they will appear before me, not at the cliffs, not at any distance, but here, in this room, close enough to touch. The fog presses against the windows. The cabin is silent except for my breathing and the scratch of this pen. I can feel them waiting. I can feel their patience, their hunger, their terrible gratitude. I have been so clever, so rational, so sure that I could solve this problem as I solved all problems, through observation and deduction and the application of logic. I was wrong. I am still looking through them as I write, keeping them at the cliffs, keeping up the pretense that I have control. But my arms grow tired, my eyes burn. Eventually I will have to stop, and when I do, if you liked this story, please like and subscribe for more diary-style horror. A special thank you goes out to my Patreon supporters, and thank you all for watching.